The dog didn't growl, didn't beg, didn't even try to move when the man's boot nudged his ribs, because pain had taught him that staying still hurt less. And that was the exact moment the former officer realized this was not a marketplace transaction, but a quiet execution waiting for permission to finish. Evan Cole had once run toward explosions without hesitation, yet now his hands trembled as he stood frozen at the edge of a forgotten flea market in rural Oregon, staring at a German shepherd tied to a rusted post with a rope that looked older than the gilt sitting in his chest. The seller's voice cut through the air, sharp and careless, calling the dog broken, expensive, useless, as if loyalty could be measured by speed and obedience alone. Evan knew that tone. He had heard it in hospital corridors, in closed-door briefings, in his own head at 3 in the morning when the world went quiet and the memories grew loud. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like, repost, or share, and subscribe. And I'm really curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Back to the story. 3 years earlier, Evan had been a decorated police officer and canine handler. Trusted, steady, the kind of man others followed without asking why. Then came the call that should have been routine, the abandoned warehouse, the hidden device, the blast that stole his partner and the dog who had leapt forward because that was what he was trained to do. Evan survived. The others didn't. Survival felt less like luck and more like a punishment that refused to end. He left the force soon after, not because anyone asked him to, but because the uniform had started to feel heavier than the grief. The flea market wasn't a destination, just an excuse to leave the house and outrun the silence for an hour. Yet fate has a cruel way of waiting in places that smell like dust and rust. The shepherd lay low, head resting on the dirt, eyes lifted just enough to watch Evan without expectation. There was no fear in that look, only patience worn thin, the kind that comes from waiting too long for kindness that never arrives. Evan's breath caught, because he had seen that expression before, seconds before everything went wrong, seconds before he lost what mattered most. "What's wrong with it?" Evan asked, his voice calm despite the storm rising behind his ribs. "Leg's no good, eats too much, can't work, can't guard, can't sell," the man replied, tugging the rope hard enough to make the metal post screech. $10 and he's your problem. $10. Less than a tank of gas, less than the cost of a bad meal. Evan reached into his pocket without thinking, the decision already made somewhere deeper than logic, because some choices are not choices at all. They are instincts that refuse to be ignored. When the bill changed hands, the rope was untied and dropped like the last thread holding the dog to a life that had never been fair.
The shepherd didn't jump or wag or celebrate. He simply struggled to his feet, favoring the injured leg, and stepped close to Evan's side as if that spot had always belonged to him. In that quiet, unremarkable moment, neither of them knew it yet, but something long buried had shifted, and 2 broken survivors had just found the beginning of a reason to keep breathing. Evan didn't name the dog right away, because names carried weight, and he wasn't sure either of them could carry much more. So he simply drove home with the shepherd lying quietly in the back seat, breathing slow and shallow, every bump in the road reminding them both that healing was never smooth. The house was small, quiet, and unfinished, the kind of place where sound echoed too loudly and memories settled into corners. Yet the dog stepped inside without hesitation, limping across the floor and lowering himself near the couch as if he understood that this was not a home but a refuge still learning how to exist. That first night, Evan barely slept. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch, listening to the dog's breathing, waiting for nightmares to come, for the familiar jolt of panic that usually ripped him awake. It never did. Instead, when his chest tightened and his thoughts began to spiral, a warm weight pressed gently against his leg, steady and present, not demanding anything except permission to stay. Evan rested his hand on the shepherd's head and felt the slow rhythm beneath his palm, grounding him in a way medication and therapy never quite managed to do. The vet visit the next morning revealed the truth the seller never bothered to learn. The leg wasn't useless, just improperly treated. Old fractures, healed wrong, painful but manageable. With rest, care, and time, the dog would walk comfortably again, though he would never run the way he once might have. Evan smiled at that, because neither could he. They were evenly matched in their limitations, 2 lives adjusted instead of ended. He finally gave the dog a name, calling him Ranger, not for what he could do, but for what he represented, a quiet guardian who had survived more than anyone knew. Weeks passed. Evan started walking again, short distances at first, Ranger pacing beside him, their steps uneven but synchronized. The nightmares didn't vanish, but they softened, losing their sharpest edges. When Evan froze at sudden noises, Ranger leaned into him, solid and real, reminding him where he was. When Ranger's leg ached, Evan sat with him on the floor, speaking softly, learning patience the hard way. They didn't fix each other. They steadied each other. The miracle wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no headlines, no medals, no applause. It was found in mornings where Evan woke up without dread, in evenings where laughter returned in small, unexpected bursts, in the way Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor whenever Evan entered a room, as if to say, "You made it back." Months later, Evan returned to the flea market, not to buy anything, but to stand where it had all begun. He realized then that $10 hadn't bought a useless dog. It had bought a second chance, not just for Ranger, but for a man who had forgotten that surviving wasn't the same as living. And as they walked away together, limping but unbroken, it became clear that sometimes the quiet miracles are the ones that save us completely. This story touched millions of hearts. Did it touch yours? Let us know with a like, comment yes, and subscribe or follow for more amazing stories like this.